All right, so this is gonna be my first attempt at a YouTube video here. I've never done this before, so I'm just trying it out. I'm just gonna do a whole series for this entire project, from start to finish. So today I'm doing H&R lowering springs. These are the Super Sports. I don't exactly remember what the total drop is, but it's supposed to be pretty low. I had the Sports on my previous M4 and that was pretty low already. And I bet you're probably wondering why I'm on jack stands. Oh, you have a lift in your garage. Why are you on jack stands? Long story short, I ran into a bit of a problem with my concrete. Right here on this post, I don't have enough thickness. I've only got like 3 inches of concrete over here. So I gotta like excavate a small section over here and pour a new footer with rebar. And then I'll be able to get this thing up and running. So for now, we're just using jack stands. And you know, it'd actually probably be helpful for the people who are doing this at home because not everybody has a lift in their garage and only really have access to a jack and jack stand. So hopefully this helps anybody. So these are the springs. These are the fronts, rears, pretty self-explanatory. It comes with new bump stops. Only for the fronts, not for the rears, because you're not pulling the shocks out of the rear to do springs. You're only obviously just dropping the lower control arm, pulling the spring out. So these are just going to replace the factory bump stops. If it focuses. So to start, obviously you're going to have a bunch of cowls and boots up here. Mine are already off. These have been sitting in the trunk for quite some time now. So you're gonna have to remove these 2 cowls right here, and you're gonna have to pull off, they're in here somewhere. It's little rubber dust guards that go over the top of the top hat right here. There's supposed to be like a rubber dust guard going over the EDC cable, but mine are already off. They're in the trunk somewhere, like I mentioned. So you're gonna go ahead and pull those off. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna pop off this cap right here and disconnect the EDC cables. So starting with the passenger side, these fronts are gonna be pretty straightforward. Since we're only doing springs, we don't have to pull the top hats out. So what we'll do is we'll just put a load on the rotor. We'll take the jack, we'll put a load on the strut, and we'll just take off the main nut at the top of the strut. The 12.18 millimeter at the top of these, and we'll take off the nut on top and then slowly let the jack down and the strut will just fall right out of the tower. Before we do that, you're gonna wanna disconnect the wheel speed sensor right here. So you don't have to disconnect it behind the rotor. We're just gonna pull it out of this bracket and take it out of this case right here. If it wants to cooperate, I'm just gonna pull it out of here and pop it out of the connector, take it out of this bracket right here that's just behind the dust guard, and then just kind of like wrap it around the brake hose just to keep it there. The reason we're taking this off is once we drop the strut out, the entire knuckle is going to fall forward, and you don't want to put too much tension on this cable right here and then risk breaking it or breaking the connector, because that would not be good, and that's just another thing you have to replace. These rocks out of here. All right, now we're gonna pull off this cable right here. That pops right out of there. And then there's a tab right behind here. Just gonna push down on this tab and give it a pull. Wiggle that out. Tuck this behind the brake hose just to keep it out of the way. Tile knot there or something like that. Whatever, it's good enough. Now, since we're just dropping the strut down and we're not actually removing it from the knuckle, you don't have to remove this pinch bolt right here. This is a 16 millimeter. If you were actually replacing the strut with like a coilover, or if you were putting like a height adjustable kit on it, which means you have to replace the spring perch right here, then you would have to take out the pinch bolt, but this does not have to come out because we're not pulling this out of the knuckle. We're just taking off that top nut right here and then dropping it right down and pulling it forward past the fender liner, and then we can just pull the spring right off. You do have to disconnect the sway bar end link though, only the top one right here. That's a 16 millimeter. You're supposed to counter turn it. So these have a T30 right here at the end of that bolt, or at the end of the stud on the link, and then the actual nut itself is a 16. The right way to do it is you're supposed to take a Torx a bit, hold the stud and then turn this with a wrench. This is my own car, so I really don't care, but if this was somebody else's car, then I would be doing it, because you don't want to really risk damaging the ball joint on the sway bar link. But like I said, this is my car. I don't really care. If it was somebody else's car, I would be doing it the right way. But I'm just gonna take my impact with a 16 on it and buzz this right off. Come on over here, grab this. And what is this? That's a 17. This is a 16. You are supposed to replace these, so BMW just recommends it. Like I said before, if this was a customer's car or somebody else's that I was doing work for, then I would replace them. But again, it's my own car, don't really so this is just gonna go right back on. Now we're just gonna pull the sway bar out, or sorry, not the sway bar link. Just set that off to the side. Now, in order to get to the top nut on the strut, we just have to pop off this dust boot for the EDC connector. If your car has EDC, you will have this. If your M3, M4, M2 comp does not have EDC, then you won't have to worry about this. There won't be any connector. But in this case, we're just gonna take a small little pry tool, pop off this rubber boot, and disconnect the connector off the top of the strut. Just gonna pop off this rubber boot. If it wants to move, it's not exactly being very forgiving. And then that is the connector for your EDC. So we're just gonna take this thing right here, turn it upside down, squeeze it in there, give it a little pop, and it comes right out. Then we're just gonna pop off this little plastic dust guard and put that off to the side. Now, before we release that nut, we're gonna have to put a load on the strut, just so, because if you buzz this off right now without having a load on it, the entire strut assembly is just gonna shoot right down. It won't be good. So we're gonna take the jack, we're gonna put a load under the rotor, and then we're gonna buzz off this top nut. Like I mentioned earlier, under here, you are supposed to do this by hand. You're supposed to counter hold it with a pass-through socket. So it's a 12.18 millimeter nut, and you're supposed to use the pass-through to hold the top of this right here, and then turn the 18 with a pass-through socket. But I don't have that with me right now, and like I said, it's my car. I really don't care. So I'm just gonna take an 18 millimeter 12-point socket and just buzz it right off. Watch out for the dust guard behind here. You don't want to bend that. You just want to get it right on the bottom of the rotor. Now we're going to grab this 18 right here. This is a 1/2-inch drive socket. It is a 12.18 millimeter. Now that the nut is off the top of the strut, we're just gonna lower this jack down slowly to let the load off, and that strut will just fall right out of the tower. All right, so now the factory spring is out. That's the boot. The bump stop, we're gonna be replacing that bump stop with the ones that H&R gave us. From this point on, you're just gonna do the entire thing in reverse. So we're gonna take the new bump stop and the boot, throw it into the new spring. We're gonna throw it on, make sure it's facing the right side up, and just do the entire process that I just showed you in reverse. Before you put the new spring in, clean off this rubber perch cover, just like, because it collects a lot of rocks, a lot of dirt, debris. So you just clean this off a little bit with a towel and maybe some brake cleaner or whatever. We're gonna take the new spring, make sure it's facing the right side up. You can just look at the letters and the numbers, pretty straightforward. Throw this on, and we're going to put the bump stop in. Throw this on and push it right back up. We're gonna have to get the jack back out in order to push this back up into the tower. So we're gonna set that off to the side. Jack. jack it up while also guiding it into the tower at the same time. Make sure everything is lined up. Then we're going to put a load back on it. Take your top nut right here. We're going to thread this right back on. I almost forgot to mention, when you're putting everything back together, remember, you do have to put the sway bar link back in, and then this connector and the wheel speed sensor do have to go back in. So don't forget that. Now from this point, we're just gonna be doing everything in reverse. So we're gonna take this EDC connector right here, and we're gonna plug that back in like that. Take this cover, oh wait, nope. I forgot. Pop that back out of there. Gotta put the plastic cover right here, back on top. Now for the reassembly, you're just gonna be doing, like I mentioned before, everything in reverse. So now that the strut is back up inside the tower, nut is on, tightened down, we're just gonna put this plastic cover back on, put the EDC connector back in, the rubber boot, and then you're just gonna move over to the driver's side and do the exact same thing on here. The only difference is on the driver's side, instead of just a wheel speed sensor, you have the wheel speed sensor and the brake pad sensor right here. So you're just gonna disconnect both of those from this door, this plastic door right here. Pull the connectors out, take them off, take them out of the brackets, and just tie them up on the side so they don't pull and break when you pull the knuckle down. That's the only difference. Other than that, everything else is the exact same from driver to passenger. So I'm gonna do this side, and then I will pick back up when I move on to the rear. All right, I need a drink. Yes, I'm drinking a White Claw. I'm done for the day. I'm gonna pick this back up tomorrow because I'm going out. I gotta go wash my hands, these dirty ass hands. This is done for the day. I'm gonna pick this back up tomorrow morning to do the rears, but the fronts are done. All right, so we're back. It's the next day. We're gonna start on the rears. Normally, this wouldn't really be a 2-day project. If you kind of know what you're doing, you could have all this done in like less than 2 hours flat. I just let it go to the next day because it's the weekend and I can. For the rear, this is gonna be very, very simple. It's a lot easier than the front. It's very straightforward. You don't have to remove the shock. You don't have to remove anything off the car. All we're gonna do here is we're gonna take out the bolt on the subframe for the lower control arm, and we're just going to drop the lower control arm out, like lower it down, pull the spring out, and then literally put the new one right in. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna take out this bolt right here, and there's another nut on the other side. These are 21 millimeters on both sides, and we are just going to drop the lower control arm down, pull the spring out, and then put the new one right in. The only difference on the driver's side is you're gonna have to pull off this level sensor. It's a 10 millimeter nut, and then you just gotta counter hold it with a 9 millimeter wrench right there, and you can just pull off this level sensor, because if you drop down this lower control arm without disconnecting that sensor, you'll break it right in half. I know that because I've done it before, so don't do what I did. It's gonna be the same thing in the rear on the driver's side. Very simple. Pull out that bolt right there, it's a 21, and then nut on the other side. Drop that lower control arm down, pull the spring out, put the new one in. So we are going to grab a box wrench, 21, preferably a ratcheting one. It's gonna make your life a lot easier. I'm gonna use a gun with a 21. There's a couple tips and tricks. We'll get to that in a little bit. Sometimes I use a spade punch to line the lower control arm back up once you put the new one in. I almost forgot to mention, when you're dropping the lower control arm, you do want to have a jack. Same situation as the front. You want to have a jack right underneath where the spring is before you take out that bolt to put some preload on the spring, because that will shoot down and smack you in the face if you pull that bolt out with no jack underneath it. So we're gonna do that right now. I'm gonna set the phone up. I'm gonna do a little time lapse. Just like how we did with the front, we're gonna take off this like rubber perch cover or whatever the hell you want to call it. There's a lot of corrosion in here, so we're just gonna take some brake clean, kind of spray it off a little bit, see if we can clean some of that off, just so we get a nice good contact point when we put it back on the lower control arm. It's a little, I mean, it's a little like, this thing's pretty the new springs didn't come with any new ones, so we're just going to clean these off as best as we can and just reuse it. And just clean this off. This is going to go on the bottom of the new spring. Make sure that's lined up. And then the top perch is also going to come off. This one's pretty clean because this one doesn't get a lot of dirt and debris. This one's looking pretty good, so we're just going to wipe down the outside of this one. And this is also going to go on the new spring. It does have like a tunnel to line up. We're going to go put this back in on the passenger side. One thing I found that helps to line up the bolt holes on the lower control arm is to take this punch right here and you're gonna slip it in through the back and pull on it, use it as like a pry tool to line up these two holes that the bolt goes in. Notice what happens when I take this and I slide it in through the back. Lines up those bolt holes perfectly. So now that the passenger side is done, I'm gonna do the driver's side. I'll time lapse this one because I already explained the passenger side in the previous clips. But like I mentioned before, that has to come off. You don't wanna break that. A lot of people forget it. I did it one time, I learned that the hard way. I dropped out the lower control arm, forgot to take out the level sensor, and I snapped it right in half. It's a 10mm nut, and then you counter hold it with a 9mm wrench. Just pull it off, take off one of the links. You don't have to pull off the entire thing, just remove one of the links. Okay, so we're pretty much done at this point. Before I put the wheels back on, I'm actually gonna take these outside and spray them down. Since I already have them off the car, you know, might as well clean the inside of them as much as I can since they're already off. It's like a while you're there kind of moment, you know, I already have them off, I might as well clean them all. So I'm gonna go do that. Maybe I'll time lapse that or some and then I'll throw them back on, put the car back down on the ground, and pull it out and see how it looks with the springs on. Everything is all back together. I'm not gonna finish putting all this back together. I'm not even gonna bother putting the whole engine bay back together. But other than that, everything else is looking good. I'm gonna cut this right here and let's go clean these wheels. That is all. I hope everybody enjoyed. If anybody has any tips, suggestions, please leave them in the comments. I do want to try and do more of these throughout the entire project. You know, just do everything from start to finish, make it like a multi-part series. So if anybody has any suggestions, please let me know. Hopefully this helps anybody who wants to do this at home and doesn't really have access to a lift, which made it a little bit better that I did it on jack stands, because then it makes it a little bit more accessible for everybody.